Okay, so we're done with the first two groups. We're on to the third. Let's get into it. Numbers outside the grid show the number of blue hexes in that column. So just like when we had a hex that showed a 0, and we were able to mark all the ones around it as not blue for free, we get to do the same thing for the columns that have zeros. So we know that this one's not blue, we know that this one's not blue. Luckily here both of these revealed zeros, so we get to mark the ones that are adjacent to those as clear also. Same with this one. Now this 3 has 3 available, so we know that all 3 of these are. And then because of this 2, we know that this one's blue. Just like how there were 3 available in a column with 3, same thing here. And same thing here with these 2. And then lastly, because of this 3, we know that this one needs to be blue too. Okay, so these groups of puzzles are adding the columns as the next level of added mechanics. This level is adding yet another one, the ones with the curly braces. Numbers like this 3 give the additional information that the 3 hexes are consecutive. And so there's a few things that go into this, a few things that you can figure out. So first off, with this 2, there's only these 2 that are available, so we know that these 2 are both it. Now, with this 2 here, there are 3 available, but we know that they're consecutive, so that means that either it's these 2 or it's these 2. But think about it, whether it's these 2 or these 2, this one is always blue, so we get to mark that one for free. But we're still not sure yet whether it's this one that's blue or this one that's blue. Okay? But over on this side, we run into the same thing, where it's either these 2 or these 2. But in both of those cases, this one is blue. But we still don't know whether it's these 2 or these 2. So how we figure it out is we look at this 3, and this 3 is already adjacent to these 3 blue ones. So we know that neither of these can be. So these 2 must be. Okay? So just like we said that whether it was these 2 or these 2, this one is blue, we're going to carry that over to this 4. So it's either these 4 here or it's these 4 here. But in either of those 2 cases, these 3 are always blue. Okay? But we're not sure whether this is the 4th one or if this is the 4th one. In this column here, we know that 2 of them are, but it doesn't have the curly braces. So it could be these 2, it could be these 2, or it could be these 2 on the end. Now that didn't work here because of the curly brace, but this one doesn't have it. So it's either these 2, or these 2. But at this point we're not sure which of those 3 options. Okay? So we'll come back to that. For now, we get to look at this 2, and it's already adjacent to these 2, so we know that these 2 cannot be blue. Okay? However, this 1 says that one of the hexes in this column needs to be blue, and this is the only option. That goes along with this 3 here. Okay? Now, this 1 is already adjacent. This one is already adjacent. And now by using the process of elimination, we know that it's got to be these two for this column. And then because of this being a 4, we know that this one needs to be 4, so it's this last one here. Now, this tripped me up at first. I thought for this last column, oh, it's 3 consecutive ones. These 3 are consecutive, but then there's a break. And there's a break here. So it couldn't be these 2 and then something, like another one somewhere, because there's a break here. That's not consecutive. For some reason, even though it says consecutive, it's not talking about like empty spaces. And if we look down here, there's a 1 here, which means that this one needs to be blue. This space doesn't count. So if they're consecutive and it starts here, then it's 1, 2, 3. And that tripped me up at first, that space there. But I think that's why they showed it in this setting when it's relatively easy, is to show you that the spaces don't count. And since it's only 3, we know that all 3 of these are not blue. But before we clear out this one, I did want to show one thing about these column markers. So if you click on the number, whether it has a curly brace or not, there will be a line that goes down. And that line will show you all of the hexes within that. So like within this white line, there are 2 that are consecutive. Within this white line, there are 2 that are consecutive. Within this white line, and it's kind of hard to see on the background, but you can see it on the hexes. Within this white line, there are 2 period, whether they're consecutive or not. 4 consecutive in this white line. This is really easy to see. It seems almost pointless when we're talking about columns upright. But we're going to get to the point eventually where it deals with diagonals, maybe as soon as the next level, I don't remember. And having those lines guide your vision for the diagonal lines is really helpful. Another thing that you can do is when you have these lines, and so for like this one, I've already got my 3 consecutive ones lined up. So I know that I'm done with this one. I can right click it, and it grays it out and it removes the white line. So that just cleans up some of the clutter. You don't need to do that, but it's something that you can do to reduce visual clutter. So we're done with this one now. One thing I'll say while this is still on the screen, the consecutive, like the curly brace, that doesn't count spaces. So that's why these 3 still count as consecutive. But the numbers inside the hexes, empty spaces do matter for that. So like for this one, let's say we hadn't figured out that this one was blue yet, but we knew that this 1 was here. It couldn't be this one because there's a space there. The spaces only... The spaces don't matter for the curly braces, but they matter for everything else. A little weird there, but that's how it works. Okay, so I'll just do these lines again, so that we can see where we're working with here. Okay, and I'm just going to start from the left to the right. So here, just like we had before, it's these 3 because they're consecutive, or these 3 because it's consecutive. So in either case, these 2 are both blue, but we're not sure which of these. For this 3, it's either these 3, right? These 3, or these 3. Now, the only one that's blue in all 3 of those cases is this one. So it could be these 3, and this one's blue. It could be these three, and this one's blue, or it could be these three, and this one's blue. But we're not sure which ones yet. For this column of 2, it could be the first and the second, it could be the second and the third, or it could be the third and the first. But we're not sure which one. It doesn't have curly braces, so they don't have to be consecutive. It could be any of those 3. So we're going to leave that for now. We have a 0 here, so we get to mark both of these. We'll come back to these black numbers, but we're done with this column, so we get to gray it out. For this 1, just looking at the column itself, we're not sure which one of these 2 it is. If you're looking ahead, you might be able to tell which one it is, but we'll come back to it. We're in the same spot as we were over here, where we've got 5 orange tiles, orange hexes in a row, and it's 3 consecutive. So just like we did over here, we get to mark the middle one because it is going to be blue in no matter what situation. Similarly, we have 6 orange hexes, and 4 of them need to be blue. So here, we actually get to mark 2 as blue straight away. So we can have these 4, we can have these 4, or we can have these 4. So in any of those 3 cases, both of those are blue. For this column here, could be these 2, could be these 2, or it could be these 2. So in this column, there are no hexes that are always going to be blue no matter what. So we don't get to mark any of these yet, but once we figure out, some stuff later on, then we'll be able to come back. Just like over here where we weren't sure which of these 2 was blue, we don't have any information on these 3, which of these 3 is blue. So we'll come back. Just like this column here, we have 0, so we get to mark both of these, and then we can gray this out. So we've gone through the columns as much as we can. So now we're going to need to go back over some other information. Either we can go through the columns a second time, because maybe uncovering some information on our first pass gives us more information on the second pass. That's possible. Now, in this case, it hasn't yet. So we're going to move to looking at the numbers in the hexes instead. So here we have a 0, so we get to mark both of these. This 1 is here, so this one needs to be blue. This one is already adjacent, so this one can't be. And now we can kind of peer back at the columns again. So this, we haven't gotten any new information, no 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 new information. However, here, we do have some new information. There's 1 blue hex in this column. None of them are blue yet, and there's only 1 option. So this one needs to be. And now we have our 1 blue hex in this column, so we can gray this one out. Alright. So if we go back over the columns again, we can come to here, and it looks like we don't have any new information. However, we do. It's just kind of tricky. So if we look at this 1, we know that one of these 2, and only one of these 2, needs to be blue. So if we go through our possibilities, these 2 are blue, or these 2 are blue, or these 2 are blue. So there are 3 situations. In the first situation, both of these are blue, but that can't be the case because only 1 hex that's adjacent to this is blue. So it can't be that both of these are blue. In the third case, where both of these are blue, that means that neither of these are blue, right? But that can't be true, because if neither of these are blue, then there's not a blue one that's adjacent to this one. So if there are 3 options, and it's not 1 and it's not 3, then it has to be the second option. So we know that it's these 2. And if you look down here, this 1, the same things are going to hold true as held true up here. So we actually know that both of these are blue. And since both of these are blue and this is a 2, we know that neither of these ones are. And we get to mark this one as gray. So now this one is already adjacent, so we get to mark off both of these. We have a 0, we have another 0, and then if we move down to this 3, it's adjacent to 1, and there's 2 more available. And if we look here, we can also tell because of this 4, we have these 2, right? This would be 3 and 4. So that's just further proof that those 2 are blue. And now we've got our 4 consecutive blues, so we get to mark this one off. Looking here, we've got 3 consecutive blues, and it needs to be both of these as blue. And then we get to gray this one out. Now, I said earlier when we were looking at this one initially, that if you were looking ahead, you might be able to tell which one of these 2 is blue. And we can tell now that this one, is the one that needs to be blue, because of this 3. It's adjacent to the 1 blue, 2 blues, so this would need to be the 3rd blue. However, let's ignore that. Let's cover that up. Let's cover this 3 up. We could have told earlier, because of this 2. This 2 is only adjacent to 2 that can be blue. This one and this one. So we actually could have told before that this one needs to be blue. And that's confirmed by this 3. So this one's blue. And because of this 1 in the column, and because this one is already adjacent, this one can't be. So we've got our 1 in this column. We'll gray this out. This 1 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent to 1. And like we said before, this one needs to be blue. And now if we look at this column of 2, we have 1 blue, so we need 1 more. And this is the only option. We've got our 2 in this column, so we get to mark that off. Okay, so this is another part that's kind of tricky. If we look at this 2, it's already adjacent to these 2. Okay, so we know that this one cannot be blue. Now, we can now immediately solve for the rest of this column. And the reason why is because they're consecutive. So we have this 1 blue here, and we know that the other 2 blues need to be consecutive. Well, we have a black one here, so it's kind of blocking. So we know that if all of the blues are consecutive, they need to go down from here, which would be the 2nd one and the 3rd one. And since we've got our 3 in this column, then we know that this one can't be blue. And then we get to gray this one out. And that gave us this black 1 here, which is already adjacent. So this one can't be. Because this is a 3, we know that this one needs to be blue to be the 3rd one. And that's it. Alright, we get to move on. And this is adding another additional mechanic. So the numbers like this with the dash on either side gives the additional information that the hexes are not connected. And in this level it doesn't matter, but it'll matter later. So for this 2, it could be this one and this one, or it could be this one and this one, or this one and this one. There's a lot of different possibilities that it can be. However, in this example that they give down here, they give the number 3. So just pretend for a second that this is a 3 with dashes on either side. So what I initially thought that a 3 with the dashes on either side would mean was that this would need to be blue, and then it can't be connected to another one, so this one could not be blue, and then this one needed to be blue, and then this one could not be blue, and this one needed to be blue, because then you would have 3 blue ones and none of them are connected. That's not how this game interprets that. This game says that, pretend this is a 3 again, it's saying that there are 3 blue ones in this column. However, any 2 of them can be connected, but not all 3. So it wouldn't necessarily be the case that this one, and this one are blue. It could be that this one and this one are blue, and then one of these 2. It couldn't be this one, because if these 2 are blue, and then this one is also blue, then all 3 of them would be connected. But any 2 of them can be connected, but not the 3rd one. So it was a little tricky for me to get that at first, because that's not how my mind interpreted it, but that's how the game does. So just something to keep in mind. Again, it's not important for this level, but it will be in the future. Okay, so where do we start here? An easy place to start is always with zeros, so we get to mark all of these. And then let's just keep going from here. We can immediately know all of these ones are blue because of these 2s. And then we're kind of stuck. Okay? So then let's go to the columns. I'll turn these on. I won't always turn them on, but just while we're getting a feel for it, I will. Okay. So one of these 3, but we don't know which. One of these 5, we don't know which. 2 of these 5, with one of them already being blue, so one of the additional 4 is blue, but we don't know which. Likewise here, but when we get here, something changes. It's in curly braces, so they're connected, consecutive. So just like we had in the last level, there's a blue one here. The space doesn't matter, but this black one is blocking it. So we know that the other blue one can't be going down because it's being blocked. So it needs to go up. And now we've got our 2 here, so we get to mark this one as black. And then also this one is in the same column, so we get to mark that one as black. And now we've got our 2 for this column, so we get to gray this one out. Just like we had on the other side, we don't know which of these is blue, and we don't know which of these is blue. Unlike the other side, this is a column of 2 where they're not connected instead of 1, but we still don't know which ones. And then here we actually can tell. So we know that it needs to be these 2 as blue. And the reason we know that is because if these 2 were blue, they would be connected. If these 2 were blue, they would be connected. But because of the dashes, they can't be connected. So we know that it can't be these 2 or these 2. And that only leaves one option, them being on the outside. These 2. So we've got our 2, so we know that this one can't be blue. And we get to mark this off. While we're here, we've got this 2 and it's already adjacent to 2. So the other 4 that are adjacent to it already, we get to mark off. Okay. This 2 means that this one needs to be blue. And then we're kind of stuck for now. This 2 here is adjacent to this 1, so it's one of these 3. And then this 3 is adjacent to this one, so 2 of these 3, but we don't know which. It could be this one and one of these 2, or it could be both of these and one of these 2. But we're not sure which one, so we'll come back to it. But earlier we discovered some other stuff that can help us out. So we have a 0 here. We have a 1 here. Again, the spaces do matter for the black hexes, not for the curly braces. So we know that this one needs to be blue because this space doesn't count. Similarly here, this one's blue. And now this told us something special. So this tells us that this one and this one are blue, so no other ones in this column are. And we get to grade this out. Same thing over here. We have a 0 here and a 0 here. All right. And now for this column here, we've got 1 blue and then 1 available, and 2 in the column as a whole. So we know that this one's blue, and we know that this one's blue. We also knew that because this 2 here, with 2 adjacent to it, forced both of them to be blue. So 2 different ways of getting at the same thing. And we get to grade these out. This 1 is adjacent. This one is adjacent. And then this one only has this one as an option. And there's only 1 in this column. So we get to mark off all of the other ones and grade this out. We have a 0. We have a 2 here. It's already adjacent to this one, so here's the other one. And this one's kind of interesting here. So this 1 here could be this one, or it could be this one. So if we look down at this one, the only option is for this one to be blue because of this one. So now this one is already adjacent, and we get to mark this one off. Okay. This is another interesting situation. So for this 2, it's already adjacent to this one, so it's one of these 2, but we don't know which one. And then for this 2, it's already adjacent to this one, so it's one of these 2. So it is one of these 2 and one of these 2. So if it's this one that's blue, for one of these 2, if it's this one that's blue, then this one can't be blue, and then because of this 2, this one would need to be blue. The problem is that this column only has 1, so it can't be the case that it's this one and this one being blue. So it's only this one. And this one being blue satisfies this 2 and this 2. And now this 2 is adjacent to 2, so this one can't be. And this 2 is adjacent to 2, so this one can't be. Additionally, it's 1 in this column, and we already have our 1, so we get to mark off both of these and grade that out. This 2 is already adjacent to 2. This 2 is already adjacent to 2. And then these 2's both make this one blue, because it's adjacent to this one. This is the second. Okay. So here, we're still in the same situation where one of these 3 is blue, and then 2 of these 3 are blue. And that's still the case. However, we've uncovered one new piece of information, and that new piece of information is this 1 here. This one forces this one to be blue, and because this 2 has the dashes by it, this one can't be blue, because then it would be 2 blue ones consecutive. So now if we look back at this 3, it's adjacent to 1, so it's 2 of these 2. So it has to be both of these. Now if we come back to this column, we already have our 2 blue ones, so we know that neither of these 2 are. And then we get to grade that out. This 1 is already adjacent, and this one forces this last one to be blue, and we have 1 blue remaining, so that's further evidence. And we're done with that level. Okay, so this one has a mixture of curly braces and dashes. I'll go ahead and highlight the columns one last time. This will be the last time that I highlight all of the columns. I may highlight them in the future if I need to like visualize something, but I won't generally just highlight all of them. So let's start with here. We have 5 hexes where 3 of them in consecutive order are blue, so we get to mark the center one. 5 hexes with 4 consecutive, so we get to mark those 3. Okay. These 2 not being consecutive tells us only one thing so far. It can't be these 2. It could be, and actually needs to be, one of these 2, but it can't be both of these 2 because they're consecutive and it has dashes. So we know that this has to be one of them. Since there are 2, they're not connected, and there are 3 total, so this one needs to be. But we're still not sure which of these 2. It could be this one, because it's not connected because it's broken up by this black 2, or it could be this one because it's broken up by this black 2, and then whatever this one is. So it could be either of these 2. We're not sure yet. This one is adjacent, so we get to mark all the other ones. And then this is 2 that are consecutive out of 2. This 2 is already adjacent. This 3 forces this one to be blue. And then this 1 forces this to be blue. And now we have 2 in this column, so this one can't be. Grayed out. All right. We have a 0 here. And okay, so we know that one of these 2, because of this one of these 2 is blue. And we know because of this one of these 2 is blue. This 3 is adjacent to 1. So it's one of these 2, and one of these 2, and 2 of these 4. But we don't know which ones yet. So we need to come back. Let's move over to this 2. So this 2 is already adjacent to 2. This 2 forces this one to be blue. This one is already adjacent. And now this one forces this one to be blue. Now we have our 4 in a row. So we know that this one can't be. And then grayed out. This one is adjacent. This one forces this to be blue. This 2 is already adjacent to 2. And we have our 2 here, so we get to gray this out. Okay. Now we see here that we have a 3, and it is already adjacent to 3 blues. So this one can't be. And we have a 3 in a curly brace. We have 1 blue here, so we know that it needs to go up. And then this one can't be. This 2 is already adjacent. This 2 forces these 2. This 2 forces this one. This one is already adjacent. This one is already adjacent. This 3 forces this one. This 2 is already adjacent. This one is already adjacent. This one is already adjacent. This one is already adjacent. This 1 forces this one. This column here already has its 1, so this hex is not. Grayed out. This one forces this hex. This 2 is already adjacent. And lastly, this 3 is adjacent to this 1, so these 2 must be. And that's it for the 3rd section. We'll be moving on to the 4th one.